Everyone, welcome back to episode number 64, Pest Control Millionaire. Today's going to be a little bit different. Today I have one of my own guys in here. He kind of gets to tell his story of how he got into the pest control business, and just tell his journey along the way. But I have a lot of questions for him. This is like my first real mentee, so we'll get to go through a lot of that. So everyone, welcome James Bruce. James is a stud, and I've been after you for a while. I know you did episode 1 with me, but now you're back for episode 64, just to kind of tell you your year of success and ups and downs and things like that.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Let's get rolling. Why don't you just introduce yourself and then just kind of tell us, what you did and who you were as a kid, when you were
kind of just to get to know me.
Yeah. Just like from like 5 to 7, 10, 11, 12, 17, 20 years old.
Yeah.
Up to, what are you, 25 now?
25. Yeah. About to turn 26.
Yeah. So why don't you just walk us through, who you were as a kid, what your upbringing was, things like that.
For sure. So my name's James Bruce. I'm 25 years old, about to turn 26. As a kid, I was pretty quiet. I wrestled from a super, super young age. That was kind of what kept me going. And then playing sports like wrestling, soccer. I played baseball when I was a kid. Pretty much did everything. I was super athletic when I was a kid, but I didn't really have I wouldn't say I really had a purpose until I was a junior in high school. I don't really remember a ton of my younger years other than a few highlights of my sports and whatnot. But
why don't you walk us through some of those highlights when you were younger? And even if there were some bad things that you remember, tell us what your upbringing was.
Yeah. So when I was younger, fortunately enough, I had divorced parents, but they were best friends just for us kids. We had, between the two households, I think there was 11 kids that were running around at one point. So basically there were 7 in one household and there was 4 in another household. So it was tough juggling, all my different brothers and sisters. I only have one real brother, no real sisters. But I treated them all like they were my family, like they were all immediate family to me. Some of the fondest memories I have are just honestly hanging out with my brothers and sisters. That was what got me through my childhood, because we lived out in the country. There wasn't much to do other than torment each other, to be completely honest with you. Throughout my younger years, like I said, I just played a lot of sports, and my parents would, pitch in. Neither of them had super phenomenal jobs. We were just kind of the average family, but taking care of 11 kids in total, it obviously put a damper on the income. But I was fortunate that all of my needs for my sports, for, my health, stuff like that, my parents always, they one or the other would do it, or they would pitch in together to make things happen. So I always had a new pair of soccer cleats every season. But it was never, I remember when we were really young, going to the McDonald's, my mom would sneak us. She was like, don't tell my stepdad that I'm getting you, hot fudge sundaes from McDonald's. Cause they were 50 cents. We didn't have the money to spend on the 50 cents, but we always had everything we needed. So, that was good. Just a couple of my sports memories. I remember, my first couple of wrestling matches, I was absolutely terrible. I got my face kicked in, but I felt like that, even from a super young age, that drove me to be better. I was always I loved competition. I didn't want to lose, but at the end of the day, to be brutally honest, I sucked right when I first started. And then soccer, I remember my first bicycle kick goal. I was a freshman in high school playing on the varsity team. And I remember that was when my true love for soccer kicked in. I always loved it when I was a kid, but when I scored that goal, I was like, wow, maybe I am actually pretty good. Yeah, I was like, oh, maybe I am actually pretty good and I can take this to the next level. So I wrestled all 4 years of high school and then went on to play college soccer afterwards.
So you skipped around a little bit. You went from when
I was super young to getting out of high school.
So what about the in-between years? What do you remember from those in-between years? I'm just trying to get to know you as a person. I mean, I know pretty well.
Yeah, you know me pretty well. But just for everybody else,
you're very competitive. You're very driven. You said you weren't until you became a sophomore. But before you were a freshman and sophomore, what happened that maybe triggered the competition, or something that happened in life that happened, whether it was good or bad, that might have triggered some of that? Did you guys play sports together as a family? Did you guys, see you guys wrestling and all the time and fighting?
Yeah.
What were you guys typically doing? How were you raised? What did your parents have a lot of strict chores for you? Just kind of how you grew up.
It was kind of a wild family. My stepdad was super strict at first, and my mom was super, super laid back. So it was it was a clash always between his kids and my mom's kids. Like it was always a clash. So I feel like that like played a huge role in my life for the sole fact of like, that's what drove me to get into sports and stuff like that. Cause I didn't always necessarily want to be like surrounded by all the controversy and stuff like that. So I would always just engulf myself. Like I would literally go play soccer in our side yard for 6-7 hours at a time. Like that's just not normal stuff that kids do.
Yeah. This is what I'm asking. These questions.
So like that's just not normal stuff that kids do. Kids don't go out in their yard for 7 hours straight and play soccer on a goal that literally is for like 2-year-olds. Right. Like that's literally all we had in our side yard. And then I made my dad buy one too. So in his side yard, because that was the same exact situation. I had a stepmom. Her kids were different than my dad's kids. But one thing that my parents always did is they stuck by our side. Like their kids were their kids. And, you know, they loved our step siblings the same, but at the end of the day, like they were going to take our side. So that's like the biggest thing that pushed me to where like in my latter years, like in high school and stuff like that, like I just found a love for like, cause it got me away from all the fights and, you know, just being involved in like the stupid things that happen at home. Like everybody's got them.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you have 11 siblings and you have split parents and so you're meshing two families together. And there's just a lot can happen. So in merging that many kids together, a lot of fighting, a lot of issues that come up naturally. Yeah. So that kind of drove you outside of the house to start figuring out what you like to do on the side and really setting that drive for you to be better, which is good. And then what about like in your dad's house? So I'm assuming you said your mom and your stepdad, but what was like at your dad's house? What did you guys do there? Was it different, the same?
It was a lot of the same situation. My stepmom and my stepdad, like there was bickering going on just per usual in a split up family. But fortunately I had my little brother, like, you know, I always tell you on a personal level that I always live in his shadow. But I had a little brother who was like in the same mindset as me. Like I don't like looking back at it now, it's a completely different view that I have when I was actually living it. Like I didn't realize that I was using these different tools to like escape the controversy that was going on in my family. Like I used like sports, so wrestling and soccer in order to escape like being at home. Like that's literally what we did. Yeah. Like that's why my brother became a freak at wrestling and I became a freak at soccer because like those were our niche. We loved to do it with each other, but like we each kind of like mastered our craft in separate things, which was kind of funny. But we use that like, you know, we used to go to the wrestling for, you know it, my little brother and me used to go to the wrestling room for 9 hours at a time after school, never even come home after school. Just come home, take a shower and go to bed. Like that's literally what we did to escape just like dealing with the controversy. In the family. For sure.
And then you said that you lived in your brother's shadow. What do you mean by that?
Because my brother was really good at everything. He was just like, I used it as an escape, but this kid used it as like a different kind of escape. Like he had a different fuel to his fire. I don't know why. Maybe it was because he was younger when it all started and I like had experienced the good. He never got to experience the good right away. So he used it as like a different fuel to his fire. Like it just drove him 10 times more. Whereas by the time Adam was in 6th grade, like he was out of his shell and I still wasn't out of my shell. So I held everything in, tried to hold the family together while I allowed Adam to go out and do what he wanted to do whenever he wanted to do it.
Right. So then we're roughly at your high school years. Yeah. Your sophomore year, you said that's when you feel like you changed the most. Junior. Yeah. What was the trigger that made you change? What happened during your sophomore year that you got confident or whatever?
To be completely honest with you, I was always like a super shy kid. I mean, I was good at sports and stuff like that. People knew it. I didn't realize how many people actually liked me. I always thought nobody liked me. Like that's just how I lived my life. But I actually met a friend whom no longer is actually my friend, but I met a friend my junior year of high school and I got to give all the credit to him to get me out of my shell. Like he was like always an outgoing person and I didn't realize I could be an outgoing person, but like hanging out with him, like you had to be an outgoing person or else there was no other option. Like that is the one moment that I think like all the time as to why I got out of my shell, because like without, you know, hanging out with him and stuff like that, like that was the biggest reason why I got out of my shell.
Yeah. And what happened? What did he do to get you out of your shell?
No, like I said, it was just like being around him. You had to get out of your shell or you were going to be in one of the most awkward situations of your entire life. Like it was the stupidest thing ever. Like he could make to him, it was normal. He was just trying to be funny. I think it was like him just like hiding a lot of the like demons that he had inside. So he was just super outgoing, and just hanging out with him, like you had no choice but to be outgoing. And honestly, like a lot of people are like, what are you doing? But I loved it. Like I loved getting out there, talking to people. Like I could actually like tell my story, like tell how I was raised, and just like, I don't know, share it with everybody. Like it was something that I held in for so long. And then I seen him doing it, and I was like, oh, people actually do this. Like they talk about these things. And then that's when it changed.
The people that are listening that don't know you, you're like the most outgoing person ever.
Yeah.
Like that's one of your superpowers. Like you talk a lot. You're fun to be around. You're funny. Very, very smart kid. And
I try to be funny.
But even like I met you as a freshman in high school. I was your wrestling coach, and you're a freshman. Yep. And I wouldn't say you were super shy, but you didn't talk a lot. Yeah. You wrestled hard. You always worked really hard. Yep. And I knew that from day one when I met you. And you were smart too. Like you got good grades. I think you were probably like a 4.0 student.
Yeah. 3.98.
3.98. So yeah, 4.0 student. And you took that on after high school as well. You went to college. You played 4 years of college soccer. Yep. Walk us through that period of your life. What was that like?
That period of my life, once I graduated high school, it was everything was over but the crying, honestly. Like I was just all over the place. I look back at it now, and like I'm thankful that I got those years out of my life like early, you know? Like I see people my age still doing that kind of stuff, and I'm like, holy crap, like I feel like I'm 50 years old. There's no chance I could, like I stay up till 10 p.m. now, and it's over. But like through those years, so I started college soccer. I never really cared, to be honest with you. Like I knew I was good at soccer, but then it's always a reality check when you come onto a team and it's just a bunch of studs that are way better than you, even though you were quote unquote good. Like where we grew up, soccer was not a thing. So basically a freshman year I came in, and I was pretty overweight, to be honest with you. I didn't pass any of the PE tests, kind of let myself go over the summer, had a lot of fun. Came in, really struggled mentally my freshman year. And then it wasn't till like my sophomore, like I don't remember a ton of my freshman year, to be completely honest with you. Like I didn't do much at all, besides party, to be honest. Yeah. Sophomore year I came in, and I actually like did something with myself in the off season, but it wasn't like to my standard, like I do things now. And I knew it, but I like still accepted the fact that like, okay, the season's starting, like there's nothing I can do now. I ended up getting some playing time on soccer. Like all I vividly remember, you know, from my college years was playing soccer and hanging out with my friends. But sophomore year I got some playing time, and then I got a season ending injury, and it was just like right back to square one. Like it was all over. I was done. I couldn't play anymore. I tore my hamstring straight in half. My entire leg was just black and blue. So that kind of like set my mentality back again. And then once I felt that pain and I knew that I never wanted to feel it again, I went into my junior year. My sophomore year, like I was mentioning, I always lived in my brother's shadow. I was finally like admitted it, and I was like, hey, Adam, I seriously need some help. So he actually got me in shape. Like it was all like my own mindset type deal, but I had to do the work, but he was there to push me, which was super awesome. Junior year, I was top 3 in the nation in goals and assists in all of D3 soccer. That's when I really like truly believe where I am now. That was like a huge part of my life. Like my junior year of college, made a ton of friends, was super outgoing. I was back to like my normal self. I had a great soccer season, like just distracting my mind from everything that was still happening at my house. Like that was the biggest thing that deterred me from when I was growing up, was just like worrying about like my mom, my dad, my sisters, my brothers, like everything like that. So that was a big thing. On
breaks of college, like holidays, would you go back home or would you stay at?
I would go back home. So I would go back home, but I think that's what really helped me in college is when I went back home, I would just hang out with my friends. Like I would literally just hang out with my friends, tell them about all the experiences, because like I ended up, you know, and people even told me too, like I became cocky, but I feel like I earned it. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like I'm a super humble person overall, but I would end up talking about myself a little too much. And I would just come home, hang out with my friends. I literally would pull all-nighters. I would go ice fishing, go do my bartending job, and then repeat. Like I was never home.
And then you get to your senior year. What's your senior year like? And then graduation.
Senior year, going into my senior year was the exact same thing. I just like kept the momentum going. But my senior year, halfway through, I actually tore my other hamstring straight in half. So
yeah, did you find yourself like spend a lot of time at the gym in the off season?
No, it went right back to square one again. I don't know why I did it to myself, but I mean, you seen me when I came out of college. Like I was a bum. I was pretty overweight again. And it was just like looking back at those last 2 years of my life. Like I say it now till I'm blue in the face. I can't stand people who throw a pity party for themselves, but I was throwing a pity party for myself. COVID kind of put a damper on things too, because it ended my college early. So I had to come home. And like the thing that like my parents always told me, like, you got to get a college degree. You got to walk across the stage. Like I never got the chance to walk across the stage. So that was tough.
Yeah, but you did graduate. What did you graduate with? I
graduated with a 3.6 GPA, and then I ended up keeping my full ride scholarship. So I had to keep a certain GPA to keep my full ride scholarship. And then biology. Degree? Sorry, I was trying to think of that. Biology, pre-health, pre-medicine, and a minor in psychology.
And what were you going to go do with it?
I was going to do occupational therapy, and I was hoping to work at a VA because my dad's a disabled vet.
That's awesome. I know that, but he's a great dude. Big part of your life too.
Yeah, huge.
And then, so you graduate and then you get a part-time job or full-time job being like a bartender.
I was bartending servant.
Yeah. And how did you get that job? And
my sister and I have been best friends since we were super little. She was 11 years older than me. So she like helped raise me. She knew me when I was like a brand new newborn. So basically my sister was like, how fun would it be to work together? And I'm 21 years old. So God only knows like what's going to go on between me and my sister. You'd have to be there to understand, but we went down a real bad path. During COVID, we went down a real bad path because the bars it was pretty much just to-go orders. And then it was just, the bar was free at the bar at the time. So we went down a really, really bad path.
So like a lot of people that don't know the restaurant industry, it's like you work till...
You work from like 4 to 2 in the morning. Yeah. Like that's literally the shift.
And then from 2 to 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, you're partying.
You're partying.
And then you go home, you sleep until 11, 12, and you get up and do it all over again. So it's just the life you find yourself in.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it was somebody I trusted. So like, I didn't think she was going to steer, in looking back, like I don't regret it. Like it shaped me into who I am now. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, we all have layers, right?
Yeah.
And that make us who we are today. And that's just part of your journey, part of the story.
Yeah.
Looking back on that, and looking at yourself in the light that you are today, who you are today, looking back on that James Bruce, when you see that James Bruce, what do you think in your own head?
Makes me want to throw up. Yeah. Like I'm sitting here right now, I got chills because it legit makes me want to throw up. Like me and my sister talk about it all the time. Like, why did we ever do that to ourselves? Right. So,
and I think that if you don't cringe when you look back at yourself, that means you're not growing. So, and I feel the same way. Even a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I feel the same way. Just cringe, like, God, I can't stand who I was. And that just means you're improving.
Yeah.
Which is a great thing. Okay. So then what happens? And I remember you said something to me early on in, when we met back up, you told yourself that you knew you were good. You knew that you were smart. And the first person who gave you a real opportunity. Remember that story?
Yeah. It was you.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying, like, remember what you said in general? Like,
yeah. Like are you talking like along the lines of like, I knew that So when I can just go back to the story. Like when I was really little, not really little, but when I was younger, 21 years old, I was obviously going down a super bad path. So when I graduated college, like when you graduate college, everybody tells you like college is this great thing. You got to go to school for 4 years. You got to get a degree. You got to do all this. Everybody tells you that until you're blue in the face. Like that's what society tells you to do. So that's what you got to do. But what nobody tells you is when college ends, nobody cares. Nobody helps you do anything. Nobody helps you find anything. When college ends, like it's you versus everybody. Like I remember I came out during COVID and I applied for 15 jobs and I didn't get any of them. I actually got one. It was a 16th job. It was the last job I applied for. Keep in mind, I just spent like $80,000 on school and they were going to pay me $13 an hour.
Right.
So I'm sitting there in my room getting ready for work for the first day. I just did 6 hours of training. The night before, I stayed up till like 4 a.m. Like, you got to complete this training before you get over here. So I'm sitting in my room, getting ready for work. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm like, are you seriously that useless? And I was like, am I going to go to this job? And I was like, nah, I'm not going. So I called my sister and I was like, Beck, I'm not going to work today. She's like, James, it's your first day. Like you were super excited. I was like, yeah, that was all a lie. I'm not going to make $13 an hour and hopefully get 15 by the end of 2 years. That's what they said. But it was in my degree. It was in my field. So like, that's what people do. Like they just settle. And I knew that, like, now this ties into like what I was telling you in the beginning when I met you. Like I knew that I was meant to do big things. Like I knew that I never wanted to get stuck at a job like my mom, like my dad, and just be miserable and have them come home and just not necessarily take their anger out from their job on us because they were really good at not doing that, but they just always just were angry at their job. Somebody's doing this, somebody's doing that, but I have to do it because I have such good benefits and like all that kind of stuff. Like it's great, grand, awesome for some people, but I knew in the back of my head that that was not me. So,
and you said the first person who ever gave you a real chance, they would get where you said there.
Yeah, it was you.
Yeah, but what you said, like the first person who gives me a real opportunity.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I always, like, when I was telling myself, like, I'm not going to work a 9-to-5 job. I'm not going to do that to myself. I'm not going to be miserable. I always told myself, like, the first person who gives me a real chance is going to get super lucky.
Yeah.
I was like, my talent is not worth $13 an hour. Like, I work harder than everybody. I've came back from so many setbacks that most people, would use as a reason to do drugs or a reason to drink themselves to death. Like, most people would use those as reasons to do that. And like, I had come back from so much diversity in my life. Like, I mean, soccer was my life, and I ended 2 seasons off season ending injuries. Like, it was tough. But that was like my mindset. I was like, if somebody gives me a chance, it's not if, it's when somebody gives me a chance. Like, I don't care where it is and I enjoy it. Like, they're going to get super lucky. That's what I always told myself. And
that kind of brings us back to like where we started connecting again.
Yeah.
For all the listeners that talk about recruiting, and say that recruiting is a really tough thing, that there's not a lot of good workers out there, especially that are millennials and young, that aren't like, they don't like to work and blah, blah, blah. And what I see most companies do is they just sit there and complain that there's no really good workers out there.
No good talent,
especially with this new generation. And then you ask them what they've done to find these people. And they're like, oh yeah, we post an ad on Indeed, post an ad on Facebook.
Yeah. And
they're waiting for these people just to show up and
drop from the sky or something.
Yeah. They just drop from the sky. But as you and I know, the good players, the good people, they're not just sitting around. They actually
the
have
toughest to get.
Yeah. They already have jobs. They're already doing something with their lives. Like you just got to get them to understand why your opportunity is better than what they have currently.
Yeah. And
so for those people who think recruiting's hard, I mean, it is hard. And this is a good example because it took me 6 months to get you in the door just to sit down and have a meeting with me.
Just to sit down and talk.
Yeah.
I was having way too much fun at the bar.
You were having fun. Yeah. And, so it's a hard thing, but when you know that the talent is there and you see a person that you know extremely well, you know what they're capable of. And I was talking about James the year prior, before I even started recruiting him. It's like, I just knew this kid's work ethic. I knew he's a bright, intelligent young kid. I'll get on with the story, but I was literally texting his mom. I'd text his dad. I'd send his mom Facebook messages. I'd send I'd say James Facebook messages, Instagram messages, text messages for 6 months straight. And his mom was like, heck yeah, he'd be so good.
She was all about it.
She was all about it. And dad wasn't. And dad and I are close.
Yeah.
And he wasn't about it at first. And so after 6 months, I think COVID finally shut the bar down. Is that what happened?
Yeah, shut the bar down. The bar went out of business. Somebody else bought it and they were just waiting for it to open back up. So I was pretty much left jobless. I was living on my mother-in-law's couch at the time, actually. I was in bad shape.
For sure.
So,
and then you're like, you know what? Yeah, let's just get together for lunch. We met at the Delona.
Yeah. I actually called my brother-in-law and I was
Dave.
like, yeah, my brother-in-law, Dave, super successful guy. I looked up to him a lot when he first came into the family. And my dad was like, absolutely not. My mom was like, do it. But my mom's known to be an impulse decision maker and just go for things. Yeah. So I was like, I don't know if I trust my mom. Like, I love her to death, obviously. But I was like, I don't know. So I called my brother-in-law, Dave, and I was like telling him like the ins and outs of like what Jonas told me and whatever. And he's like, just know, James, that if it doesn't work, it's a great opportunity. And if it doesn't work, it's not anybody else's fault but yours. If it doesn't work, it's because you didn't make it work. And I was like, oof, put it on me now.
Right. And so, we had our first meeting and, you and I we briefly talked, we got caught up and, we were just kind of talking about life and what you're up to. And you kind of told me what happened.
Yep.
I knew because we were talking, I knew you were driven by money.
Yeah.
And so
at the time I was broke.
Yeah. And so it was a simple question. And I was like, James, how much money have you made in the summer? And you're
$5,000.
You're like $5,000. And I was like, how would you like to make that in a week? And you're like, that'd be awesome. But like, there's like, something's off here. Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Your first year.
Yeah. Too good to be true.
And I was like, well, let's just try it. And then, like you said, let's just go with it and see what happens.
Yeah.
And so, man, I think it was the first day, brought you in to train, started you on phones.
Yeah.
It's a funny story to tell because
it's hilarious.
Just for all the people that are out there that have never knocked a door, never done sales, like they'll probably, or that have, will probably relate to this very well for their first phone call, their first door knock.
Yeah.
But I remember we were training and you went live for the first time and you called the customer.
I said, "Hey, is this Julie?" She goes, "Yes, this is. Who is this?" And I was like, "This is James Bruce." Beep.
And then
I
hung up on him. Yeah. Hung up on the person. And then he had to go take a breather. And then we practiced, we role played. You went into the other room in the shop and we role played over the phone again. And then I think you called her back.
Yeah.
Well, that's how that journey started.
Well, Stacy called her back actually. And then by the end of the day, I had gotten a sale because it was like against my goodwill to be bad at something.
Right. So then from there, I think you worked in the office for probably a month, I'd imagine. Somewhere in there?
Yeah, it was 60 days.
60 days?
Yeah, exactly 60 days.
And I made
63 sales.
63 sales, which is great.
Yeah. And
then from there, I think we go to, we fly out to Arizona?
Yeah, we're just like, let's go knock some doors. We're all fired up about it.
So bring us back to door knocking 101. It was our first time knocking doors. We're in the middle of Arizona. I'd knocked in Appleton for a couple months the year prior in 2020. And then 2021, we fly out to Arizona. It's middle of winter. We get 100.
Well, you didn't come with at first.
Not at first.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was in Utah.
Yeah. You were at a conference.
Our door event. Yeah.
Yep.
And I was out there with some friends and we called you guys and like, hey, everything's going. And your guys' morale was just at
it was
all-time low.
It was shot.
We got out there with a couple other companies and they weren't doing great either. And as managers,
no,
they didn't have any clue what was going on. And then that's when I flew back out there.
Yeah, you surprised us, just randomly showed up.
And I lost my wallet in the airplane.
Yep.
So I'm in a new state with zero money because my whole wallet's gone. That was fun.
Yeah.
Luckily, we can knock doors, make some money.
Yep.
But I remember going out with you for the first time and there's other people knocking doors with us too. And I still remember where I was across the street is by some big fence. And then there was like a big retaining wall.
Yep.
And I was knocking the door and you were across the street, but you were gone for a while.
Giving the guy the ringer
For sure. And I knew something was going on. And so I walked over there with you.
Yeah.
And you're out there for like 3 days at that point.
Yeah. It was Thursday. I had been out there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So it was a fourth day.
No sales.
Yeah. No sales. Zero sales.
And so for all the people who have knocked in the winter, whether Arizona or Michigan or Wisconsin or Florida, it's still winter.
Yeah.
Right.
It's tough.
And so it's off season. They had another company just dropped in like 150 reps. So they were running around as rookies all over the place too. It's not to make it any easier.
No.
But I remember going over there and just, I remember that you had the guy going, he was asking a bunch of buying questions and then you just wouldn't pull the trigger. And I said, James, just sign him up. And literally I walked away. As soon as I said that, guy pulled the credit card out of his pocket.
It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I don't know if I ever even had a sale like that to this day, to be honest with you. Like I spent at least 20 minutes with the dude.
Yeah.
And I was like, come on, like he's got to say yes at some point. I was just waiting for him to say yes. And Jonas walked over, he heard me say like one sentence and he was like, James, just sign him up. And the guy just grabbed his wallet and gave me his credit card. And I was like, what do I do with this? I'd never signed somebody up before. I was like, okay, let's do it. So yeah, that changed and then we went within 5 more doors. We had 3 more sales. Yeah. Because it was just like
and it clicked.
A light bulb went off. It was like, wow.
And so we ended up doing pretty good out there. The last half of the week, we did really good. We did
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
We were brand new. Those managers, we smoked them pretty well. And then we went back down to Florida.
Yep.
For a couple of weeks, and we had some really good success down there.
Yeah, the first door I knocked down there, I sold.
Yeah, so you just get better. But that's just how our journey started as a door-to-door company per se. At the time, we never knocked doors really. Now we're in the middle of winter in Florida and Arizona trying to figure this thing out. So in
our minds, it was going to be the best thing in the world.
It was.
we were so fired up to go there, and then like you were saying, the first couple of days, like the morale just dropped.
Yeah, immediately. But then as we got better, and which I think it worked out the best way possible.
100%.
It was hard where we were, which was great, and then we practiced all winter long, and then come springtime in our hometown, it was lights out.
Yeah, it was game over.
And so it was really good. And then your first year, we had like 5 or 6 reps
We had 3 for most of the summer, and then we had like 6 at the end.
Yeah, because like the 3 showed up towards like August, September.
Yep.
So it's you, Matt, and Dylan first year.
Mm-hmm.
You guys obviously did really, really well.
Yeah.
Take us through that summer.
Yeah, that summer was just living on a prayer summer, I always say, because I mean, we were having a lot of fun. I was still drinking at the time. And we, like me, Matt, Dylan, Dylan was always more reserved. He was always less involved in it than me and Matt were. But me and Matt, like, we'd go out, hammer out, get this big adrenaline rush, go hammer out 4 or 5 sales in a day, come back, party, and then we'd do it all again the next day. Like, I look back on it, like how I managed to keep my girlfriend at the time, like, kudos to her, because it was crazy. But just like living on the road, I had never lived on the road. I lived away from home, like in a house during college. But I had never lived away from home, like on the road for work. So that was like, and it was the first real job that I ever had. And it's funny, like looking back on it, like people say it's not a real job, or like go get a real job. You know, they'll tell you that on the doors even. But like it's real. And you're like, when you're doing it and you're successful, like you're working harder than 99% of people. Like it's just, it's a different scene. And, you know, looking back on it, the biggest motivation for that summer, like what kept me going, even in like because you know, door-to-door sales, you're going to go through highs and lows. But through all the lows, all I kept repeating in my head was when my dad looked me dead in the eyes, and somebody who I look up to like greatly, he looked at me and he said, "My son is not a door-to-door salesman. You just went to college. You're not a door-to-door salesman." I said, "All right, watch me." And then, you know, I was still in my crazy phase. I was still in having fun and like just proving everybody wrong. Like that was my favorite thing, because I knew that if I set my mind to something, like I was going to do it. And
you did great that summer, I think.
Yeah, I did. I made $67,000 in 3.5 months.
Yeah, which is awesome for your first year.
Yeah.
We didn't have the greatest, probably the training program at first.
No, but looking back now, I mean, there's a lot of key points that we still teach that we learned back then. Yeah,
for sure. Now it's a lot different. A
lot more in depth.
The business is definitely growing up for sure.
Yeah.
And then let's fast forward to year 2.
So funny, because I was literally just telling the story last night to one of our up and comers.
Yeah.
One of our mentees, I guess you would say, like probably my first like real one, to be honest with you. So I was talking to him last night and I was telling him the whole story. So I went into my second summer. So we had never recruited. Jonas was the only person I had recruited in the fall. He was like, "All right, boys, let's go hit some career fairs." And we're like, "All right, sounds good." So we ended up the second summer, we ended up recruiting, I think it was like 23 dudes, 28 dudes, something like that. It was us and 28 dudes. So there was like 30 people. And I was going into the second summer. I had so much fun in the first summer. I had a big life event happen after my first summer. I was drinking quite a bit, and I had a really like come to Jesus moment and had a big intervention with my family, and I got sober. So that was like my biggest thing. I got sober. I was like ultra focused now. I never realized how much it held me back. Like never realized. At 23 years old, you're unstoppable at that point, like in your own head. And then I got sober and I was like, holy crap, like there's a whole nother side. I remember I'd go to your house every day, every single day, sit in the hot tub and just pick his brain on like, what do I got to do to get to the next level? Like I want to be a business owner. Like I know I can do this. It can't be that hard. So I would go there, learn from you while we're hitting these career fairs. We ended up recruiting like 28 dudes, like I said. So there was 30 dudes total. And I went into the next summer, and this is the part that I was laughing at, because I went into the next summer. I was like, it's going to be just like the first summer. It's going to be great success. I'm making way more money, and I'm going to be leading this team, and it's going to be awesome. Going to the next summer, and I was like, this is not the same. Like, what is going on? And I didn't know it at the time, but Jonas like had seen something in me that like, he just wanted me to like prove it to him. Like, you can do it. Like, I know you can. We went into the second summer, and Jonas, you know, as the business started to get older, it started to grow. Jonas had a lot bigger things to focus on. And that's when he kind of gave me and Dylan the reins. I remember I was always like, is Jonas going to come down here? Is Jonas going to hang out with us? You know, stuff like that. Obviously you'd pop in like 2-3 days a week, but those 2-3 days, I had never managed a team before. I'd never been a leader. I had been a leader in like sports and whatnot, but I had never like, it's depending on you. Like how these kids' day go depends on you. And that was like the biggest thing throughout the summer that changed my entire life.
It was intentional, right?
100% intentional. I never thought it was at the time, but 100%. But
I had to give you guys a couple of days here and there to see
what
you guys could do.
Yeah.
So you could pull it off by yourselves. And I'd come in 2-3 days a week, check on things, and we talk.
The numbers could be the same when you were gone as when you were there. Because 2-3 days a week, if you were there, I mean, the numbers are great.
And,
right?
you know, for the first year, I micromanaged you.
Like nobody's business.
Yep. And then, but then you guys earned my trust. the two of you, or like clearly you did. And they earned my trust, and then I didn't have to micromanage as much. So I let it go a little bit. And then I would just take a step back to see what you guys would do. And that was planned the whole time.
It was planned, but in my own mind, it wasn't at the time. I had zero idea. Like looking back at it now, it's always like you have these aha moments. And it's like, that's like my sobriety leading into that summer was the best thing ever, because it allowed me to manage the people when you weren't there, even though like in my head, I was like, well, Joe's got to be here. But then I was like, I would never be where I'm sitting right now if that never happened to me. If I didn't, obviously I had to earn your trust, but if I didn't like perform at that level, like during that time, I would never be right here.
Right.
But
so yeah, you guys ended up with a great year. You murdered it that year, which was awesome.
Yeah.
A really good time. And then this year, finally getting caught up, half hour into this podcast of like where you're at today.
Yeah.
And this is the whole reason for the podcast, to just kind of tell you, show where you started. And then, you're a partner in a location now, and we're getting caught up to the future, right? Or to today, and just kind of walk us through like your first year as an entrepreneur on your own, and what that was like.
Yeah, I always say like nothing's like in this realm that we're in, like as a business owner, like nothing's truly physically hard, but mentally. Like you told me in the beginning of the year, like this is going to be the hardest year of your life. And I was like, what do you mean? I just managed 15 people by myself. Like there's no chance that it can be harder than that. But then when everything's on your shoulders and you have me and you talk 10 times a day, obviously, but when you have nobody down there, like actually, going through it with you, obviously, like I always say, like you're the best because we just skip the learning curve and I can ask you questions, but slowly you learn that like I could figure it out on my own too. So as far as this year, when I started, it was definitely tough. Like when we first started, we just went down there. We had got a house the week before. We got a house the week before the business started. And we were like, all right, we're going down on this day. We actually messaged a guy on, I think it was, what's the home place that you look? I can't remember what it's called. Zillow. Yeah. We messaged a guy down there and he was like, nope, you have to submit an application. It's going to be a couple weeks before you guys even get to meet with me. And we were like, no, this situation's different. Like we need a place to stay now. We got no money and we need a place to stay now. So he was an entrepreneur. He owns 9 businesses. And he's like, these young kids might actually be up to something. So he ended up leaving his business and he came and met with us. And then we toured the house and I was like, I like to make impulse decisions. So I was like, all right, that looks good. Let's do it. And we gave him the money right then and there, like out of pocket. We were like, all right, here it is. And we're going to move in next week on the 6th. And he's like, all right, sounds good. Like he was just an entrepreneur. He was a go-getter himself. So he understood. He's like, these guys are trying to make money. So we ended up moving into the house. At one point we had 10 guys living under the same roof. Yeah, way too many people living under the same roof. But we all have one goal in mind. Like that was the biggest thing I learned throughout this year, was just like keeping everybody focused on that same goal, and micromanaging them and holding them accountable for their actions. Because I know that I'm going to hold myself accountable and you're going to hold me accountable. Right. But
just like this morning at the gym.
Yep. Just like this morning at the gym.
He said
absolutely brutal work.
The day before he said, I'm going to go running every single day after the gym, after we work out. It's like, cool. Today you're like, man, I'm tired. I'm like, well, we got to go for a run still. And you're like, shit. Like, well, then don't say things that you don't mean.
Yeah. And we did run and we did do abs and we did do everything else. But that's one big thing that like I learned from this year. Like just being an entrepreneur, like your people have to believe in the end goal and all have the same like initiative in mind. Right. Yeah. So, and they all like, I feel like my skill that I learned this year was micromanaging people until I could trust them.
Yeah.
Obviously not everybody's going to earn your trust right away and some people faster than others. But like that was the biggest thing. When you're managing 12 dudes, I was managing both sides of the business. I had nothing to do with the other side of the business at first. But now like having my own, I had to learn both sides of the business. Luckily I had a really good friend who was, there
over
for me.
Operations.
Yeah. Over operations to help me through that stuff. And, we bickered and we probably fought more this year than any other year of our lives. We've been best friends since 4th grade, but the amount I learned from him and he learned from me, like that's what truly is taking us to the next level, like micromanaging those people.
Cool. What were a couple, like 2 big obstacles that happened this year that you can think off the top of your head?
One, like in the beginning, I would say the biggest obstacle in our way was the weather. We wanted to make a lot of money really fast. And like, we knew that we could do that, but the weather didn't cooperate for the first 2 months. Like it was just like all of a sudden we didn't have snow and then we had snow for 2 months when we shouldn't have snow. So that was like a huge obstacle. And then one big obstacle and one big learning point for me this year was on the operations side of things, having people drop off and having people that like go against what your company's about. Like that was a huge learning curve, like hiring people, when you're selling on the doors and you have 10 people selling and you need all these technicians to keep up with, that side of the business, like the sales side, like, cause the sales mean nothing if you can't service them. Sometimes we may have, they always say hire slow, fire fast. Sometimes I didn't listen to that right away. I would hire super fast and then fire super slow. So it was kind of the opposite. I didn't realize I was doing it because we're just living in the moment. Things were crazy. Things are always balls to the walls. But the second biggest learning thing was just like learning that, not everybody's going to fit the culture and you just got to let them go.
Right.
So
because they bring it down more than anything.
Yeah. They hurt the business more than anything. If you look at the numbers and you look at the customers that we've had like throughout the summer and you look at like, cause I mean, obviously customers are going to drop off. There's no ifs, ands, buts about that at some point. Some of them obviously, but if you look at the numbers, like when those people are around, the numbers were way greater than the people we have around now. Like when you look at, like even looking back at, if we had 10 cancellations, right, all summer, like 7 out of those 10 canceled when they were our technicians.
Yeah, because the technicians, I mean, they see the customer more than anyone else does.
100%.
And they need to be the one there, treating them like they need to be treated.
Yep.
Doing the service that they deserve and what our standards are, right?
Yeah.
And even though we train on those standards, we talk about core values, doesn't mean that they always fit the culture, like you said.
Yeah.
And if they're just up there negativity and going half-assed
well, some
jobs,
people fake it till they make it too.
Oh, for sure.
So you just can't diagnose it. And I feel like I should have been able to diagnose it straight from the interview because I'm the one who interviewed them. But just looking at like the technicians, that was a huge obstacle because it was like what like
I
things
remember
started
the phone call.
Yeah, things started to go downhill, and I was like, "What is going on?" And Jonas was like, "You got to let them go." And I was like, "Seriously?" Like I just had the morning meeting. Like I got to call them back. I literally had to call a couple people out of the field and be like, "Listen, like we got to go." So that was a huge like turning point for me.
But when you let them go, how did you feel?
Like you just got to know like it's not personal. It's just from a business standpoint. And like personally, I felt bad because I did like one of the people like genuinely as a person, but like from a business standpoint, I felt amazing. I was like, we're ready to rip again. Like it's about to happen.
Did you feel a culture change when that person was gone?
100%. And I didn't know it because nobody told me, which is stupid, but like, and nobody, like everybody was feeling the exact same way as you were, but I was just so caught up in like everything that I didn't even realize what was going on.
And sometimes, I told you this too. And when you call me, I can see it from 100-foot view because I'm not in it.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just got to take a step back and look at it from 100-foot
view,
looking down. The 100-foot view and just say, hey, like, let's look at this business from 100-foot view. And what do you see? Yeah. Because sometimes you just get stuck in it. So we talk about working, on the business rather than in it all the time. Sometimes you got to take the time to work on the business too.
Yep. Which I feel like that was a turning point for me transitioning to working on the business. Yeah. And realizing that like just straight up telling people, because I micromanaged all summer, like nobody's business, probably even a little too much. But then at that point, I finally had, you told me like, you just got to step back and look at it. Then I was able to trust some of the people to make the decisions, right? And handle some of the business that I didn't need to be doing. Yeah.
And if you just ask the question to your guys and they're not always going to make the right decision, but if you just tell them, if you ask yourself what's in the best interest of Turf Badger, and if you make that decision, whether it's right or wrong, but you have the good intentions,
intentions behind it.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Yep.
I'd rather make someone make a decision than rather not make a decision.
100%. 100%. That's what being grilling. In the sales trainings.
When you're growing up, who did you have as mentors along your early on in your career and then career now?
Early on, it was probably my dad and my mom. Like I said, they always provided for us. Those were my biggest mentors. But in the back of my mind, I always knew I didn't want to be them. Like not in a bad way, because they're genuinely good people. Like you know them super well too. Like I would never take anything away from them. They're amazing people. They've made me the person, but they also taught me a lot about things that they settled for that I didn't need to. That was huge. Like I did not need to settle for the bogus that they necessarily did and swept under the rug and hid it. Like I don't need to hide it. You know what I mean? Because I just don't need it. And then now, you're definitely my biggest mentor, like by far, 100%.
And like I said, I found James and He was just in a tough spot in life, and I was sober at this time and just guiding him along the way, just kind of setting the example, for a bunch of young kids. And if you're drinking alongside of them, you just kind of lose credibility, and partying next to them, just not a great thing to do.
No, 100%. Like sobriety all the way. And actually, it's funny to bring that up because my dad is actually 30 years sober.
Yeah.
And my mom's not sober, but she never had a problem. Like I knew that I always had a problem. It was in my blood. Like that's just, I looked like my dad. I have my dad's genes. Like that was in our blood. So everybody in my family got sober around the exact same time. So, but except for my dad, obviously. I
and your sister too.
Yeah. I'm 2 years sober. My sister's 3.5 years sober. So we all transitioned around the same time, and like she's doing good things with her life. I'm doing way bigger things with my life, obviously, but she's doing good things. But
you
just
transitioned
into what? Oh, transitioned into sobriety. Yeah. Sorry. I didn't clarify.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so like the sobriety was huge. And then just having a mentor, like having somebody who, like, I always told myself since I was a kid that I was going to get a shot, and it didn't matter who it was going to be. I was going to give it my all. And then, Jonas came along. So that was a huge turning point.
Yeah. And you kind of said it earlier, like I've been, not that I know everything yet, but constantly learning. We're constantly evolving every single day.
Yeah.
Learning every single day. But just someone who could take the learning curve away. Yeah. Make sure that you're successful right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And so that's what a lot of people ask, like, what is like coming to me versus starting their own? I'm like, you can go start your own.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. Like
100%.
I love entrepreneurs. I love everything they stand for. It's what drives America. What we can do is we can reduce that learning curve quickly.
Yeah, 100%. I don't disagree in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I did it, and I've seen people try to start up things and fail and stuff like that. I feel like it just helps to have a mentor. I mean, you still have a mentor.
Of course.
Like nobody's good enough to stop learning, right? Like I was just telling one of my guys last night who wasn't super involved in our Zoom call training. He's like, this is just super repetitive. I already know it. It's like, dude, I learned stuff from people that it's their first day. Like I do. Because they come up with something, I'm like, dang, that actually sounds good. But like just having somebody to, like, if something goes haywire, and well, it doesn't actually always go haywire, but you may think it's going haywire, just having somebody to call and be like, hey, what'd you do in this situation? It's like, oh, it's done. Like that may have taken you 1.5 years and thousands and thousands of dollars to figure out, but it took me 5 minutes. And that's like the biggest thing that you just can't replace.
For sure. In your first year in business, you're obviously super successful, built a massive company super fast, very profitable, more money in the bank than you've ever had. Like it's super impressive to watch. It's fun to see. But you were different. Like you're different than a lot of people that come through. Again, like you said earlier, you're at my house every single day in my hot tub, picking my brain, and that's what it takes. But from there, you actually ran with it and applied everything that you learned. Mm-hmm. And not everyone does that. You said you can
lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink
exactly.
it. Yeah. And
you were drinking the water, and you just go implement, and you're constantly learning. Besides college, and reading, did you ever read outside of college, like on your own?
No, I hated reading. Yeah. I never once picked up a book, even in college. To be completely honest with you, I never even picked up a book. Like I was always blessed because I was a good test taker. Like that's just who I was. I could diagnose things, and just like I mean, some people say it's a lie, but I swear to God, I had a photographic memory. Like I could look at something one time and I could literally see it in my head while I'm looking at the question on the test. So
yeah, and I can see that too, because you're ridiculous with names. You remember names from years ago.
Yeah, customers. I was just talking to Ivor in the office today. He's like, who's this person? I'm like, you remember they got the brown house that live on the corner right there? That was like your second sale of the year. And he's like, how do you know that?
Right.
So
yeah, it's super. It's like one of your superpowers. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But going back to what we were talking about, like when you started work with me and having to read, which you still don't read, but you listen to Audible. And you're like, dang, I wish I'd done this a long time ago. Yeah,
like the stuff you learn from reading is unbelievable. Now, I'm not going to go pick up a history book and read it. Yeah. Even to this day, I'm not going to listen to it on an Audible. But just like people, like college doesn't teach you life skills. College doesn't teach you how to make it. Like they teach you, like for instance, somebody's teaching you a business administration class and they've never ran a business or business management. So like, not saying college is the worst thing in the world, because it taught me a lot about life and how to make it on my own. Like that was the biggest thing I learned from it. But like the books and stuff like that, just like read the books that are going to mean something in your life. Like that's what I read, like motivational books, books on how to run a business, books on successful people. Like that's what you got to read.
For sure. I know you have big goals, but what do your goals look like for like the next 5 years?
I was just about to say, can I say my goals for the next 5 years? Because that's what I have written down right now. Obviously, I have bigger goals than this, but my goals for the next 5 years, which I'm absolutely going to smash. So I guess they're not set high enough, but my goal is to be a part of 10 Turf Badgers. And my goal in the next 5 years is to own a Lamborghini, which I will do. That will be the next time I post on Instagram.
Yeah, that's kind of funny.
When I own my Lamborghini.
So he stopped using, like he looks at social media, but he won't post on there. And he set himself a goal that the next time he posts is when he has a Lamborghini. Yeah.
When I have a Lamborghini, or which soon I might post actually in the next couple of months when I'm absolutely shredded because I'm on a big health kick right now.
Yeah.
But the next time I post will likely be with my Lamborghini. But my goals to be a part of 10 Turf Badgers, do $20 million in revenue, have a team of, 10 Turf Badgers, at least 12 dudes at every one. So 120 dudes that like are just, we're going to recruit way more than that, obviously across the company, but like recruiting's been my niche this off season. Like that's what I've really dove super deep into and figured out some really good tactics on how to recruit. And just like get everybody to believe in the same goal, because at the end of the day, like people can tell you until you're blue in the face, but I have real life stories now, and like my own story can sell, but everybody else's lives that I've changed, like that's the biggest goal at the end of the day, is to just change people's lives. Because, like you've said, like, is about to happen, like with people like me and some other guys that we brought up, like, you don't really realistically, you don't need to do this. Like you don't need to help change people's lives, and that's something that people may question when they first start. Well, they're just in it for the money. But like the amount of effort that like Jonas and, now me like put into our people, like we'd rather see our people get paid than ourselves right away.
Right.
Like at the end of the day. So just changing people's lives and recently it's been changing my family's trajectory. I just had a huge talk with my dad about that.
Yeah. And I've said that to you before, like, your entire family lineage
is about to change.
Yeah, it could have been poor, average, and all it takes is that one person to change their family's lineage for the rest of your life,
100%,
the rest of your grandkids.
It's going to change my fiance's family's life.
For
like
sure.
Her, if you think I had a bad upbringing, you should hear her story on a different podcast.
Yeah, you said before, like she never even lived in a house before. Never
lived in a house till a year ago, actually in September. And that was like my ultimate goal when I first started this job. Like I never, when I first started this job, by the way, I was sleeping on my mother-in-law's couch in her 1-bedroom apartment at the apartment complex that she runs. And then I started this job, and like I always tell people, like I have my own house now, got 40 acres behind it. I have 2 brand new 2023 vehicles. But obviously that wasn't handed to me.
Kid and a half.
Yeah, I have a kid and a half. I got 1 kid and 1 in the oven.
It's the only thing in your entire life you haven't listened to me about.
Yeah. I listen to Jones for everything except for about when to have kids. But just like I have a family, and providing, like having my wife future wife stay at home. Like she does more, at home for me mentally and everything else. Like can't thank her enough. Obviously, she's been a huge support system. Agreed. Like one of the biggest things that tears people up in this job is like working on the road, or even if they're working where they live, like people just not believing in them. And if you have a support system like a Jonas, or, my mom, no matter what I do, I could go work on the corner. If I'm being honest with you, my mom would believe in me. Like right. That's just the type of person she is. But like, no matter what, like if you have a support system at home, bar none. Yeah. But your dad's also supportive now too. 100%. Yeah, because he wants my money. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But he definitely has bought it. Yeah, he wasn't at first.
Like 100%. Now he's bought it, and he thinks, as of recently, he thinks he's an entrepreneur, and he gives me a bunch of ideas of things I should do to manage my guys. And Jonas was just over at our house the other day, and he was like, "Jonas, you should really implement this." And you're like, "Really, Bill? Really, Bill?" As if you haven't been doing it for the last 13 years. But he's a super, super awesome guy, and he supports me bar none. And, now.
You brought up a little bit ago about your health. You said you're going to be shredded this year.
Yeah.
That's been a struggle. Like you've done really, really good. And then summer comes and you fall off the wagon a little bit. And then the off season comes, you do better. Yeah. You've been super consistent lately. But even in the middle of summer, I'd just be like, "Hey, James, you get back to your routine."
No, he would text me and say, "Hey, if you had $1 million horse, what would you feed it?" And I would say, good food. Obviously, he's worth $1 million. think of you as $1 million horse.
Yeah,
and that's what changed my perspective. That text.
And I asked that question to several people, but my mentor did the same thing to me. He's like, if you had $1 million racehorse, what would you feed it? And you're like, well,
not going to feed it McDonald's.
You'd be like, great. What would it drink? You're like, well, drink this. I'm like, how often would you exercise it? Well, probably every day. Would you hire the best trainers? Well, absolutely. Would you invest in this horse? Well, 100%. Okay, well, you're the $1 million horse. And it's like a light bulb goes like, oh shit.
It's like, holy crap.
That's the best investment ever is yourself.
100%. That's literally, you took the words out of my mouth. Yeah. That's 100%.
So going back to, your goals for being shredded coming in the summer. That's probably been another big focus for you. How have you been able to stay consistent?
Well, first of all, you gave me the reins you were like, why don't you just take that time? And because I was doing other stuff, just doing stupid stuff, involving myself and stuff that I didn't need to be. But just like, you were like, why don't you just take that time and do this? And I was like, oh, wow, that actually seems like a good idea. I'll probably be a little bit happier if I do that kind of stuff. But what was the question?
Just how you've been able to keep yourself accountable.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I have accountability people like you, like some of the guys that work for me and stuff like that. They love the gym and whatnot. My cousin, Ivor, obviously. And then just every day, like it goes back to like my fiance at home. Like I'm not a morning person. Everybody knows that, but I've become a morning person, like doing stuff that you don't want to do. Like I tell her every single day, cause my kid gets up at like 5:30 every day. So I'm like, every single day, if I'm not up by 7:30, you come in there and wake me up or throw Ivy on me. Ivy will be like, wakey, wakey, daddy. That's what she says every time she comes in there, and I'm not up by 7:30 cause I set an alarm, but I'm notorious for snoozing them. Sure. So just having the people that hold you accountable now, like it's transitioning, like I can see it already. It's transitioning into the fact that I don't even like need an alarm. I don't need to be woken up by them, right? Like if I wake up, I'm up, I don't snooze the alarm. But the biggest thing that's been able to hold me accountable is not like myself, obviously, but like when I do slip up, like you've seen today, even like I do slip up, I said something, I wasn't going to do it. Just having the people around you, like that's, like it goes back to just like having somebody who's been there and done that. Cause Jonah's been working out consistently for 4 or 5 years now, 5 years, every single day at the gym. That was not me until 6 months ago. Right. Probably 6 months now. It's been almost, but like, that's been the biggest thing. Obviously, like, I don't mean to say like, oh, I lean on everybody else for everything. Yeah. But it's not every day, but when I do slip up, like I have those people at my house.
But I tell you guys the same thing. If I say something and I don't come through, you guys.
Yeah, 100%. You allow us to do the same thing.
Absolutely hold me accountable. Like, you said you're going to do this. Absolutely do it. So it goes both ways for sure. So next 5 years, going to be 10 locations.
10 locations, $20 million, 120 dudes at those 10 locations at the minimum. Obviously, we're going to be doing a lot more, recruiting 1,000 guys a year. And then
I want to heard it here first.
Yeah,
we'll have 1,000 dudes in the
Yeah, I'm gonna own a Lamborghini, make a lot of money, and have a lot of fun. That's what I'm going to do. I was going to tell you, my next post on Instagram, it's not going to be a post, but I might post on my story a picture when I'm shredded and say just that, like, quote it, Andy Elliott changed me. Just because like right when we heard that, like we got to have a 6-pack every time. But I was just going to tag him in it and be like, look what you did to me.
Yeah. And that was my goal that was my New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
Is in 2024 that I want to have a 6-pack. That's the only one that I had.
Yeah. And that's what we both
are. Yeah, that sounds good.
Like I'm doing abs on my floor at 10 o'clock at night, and my fiance sitting there like, what are you doing right now? I'm like, I'm not going to lose. I'm going to do it. Cause if Jonas has it and I don't, like, that's going to be embarrassing.
Yeah. You're 25.
You're 40. I'm 25. So I got to hold myself accountable too. So I've been doing those things outside, and like this morning we did abs at the gym and stuff like that. So.
I'll ask 2 last questions for you on this podcast.
Yeah.
What are the 2 most influential books that you've read?
Just 10X was the first book that I read, but I would definitely say that it was super, super influential. Just on the fact
you make everyone read it at this point.
Yeah, every one of the guys, we make read it at some point. Because we have that book club, and people have the Audible and stuff like that. So that's the first book I always tell people to like jump on, listen to, because it'll truly change your life. I just really like Grant Cardone and listening to him on Audible, to be honest with you. The second one would have to be Sell or Be Sold. Like, it changes your mindset on selling like you would not believe. Yeah. Like, it is absolutely incredible. I remember like I've had 2 people that I know for sure, like they were terrible salesmen. They read that and they were like, that's what he's trying to teach me. Cause like, it's not always easiest to like hear it out of your mouth or hear it out of my mouth. So like we learn this stuff obviously from other people, put their own twist on it type deal. But if they can hear it from somebody who's, I mean, that rich, like obviously it's got to be true, but sure. At the same time, like it, just those 2 books alone will change your whole life and how you view a 9-to-5 job too.
Cool. Last question of the day. What are you most proud of?
Most proud of? I'm most proud of, honestly, like when I was younger, I was always like the rock to my family. And I would always hold people together. Like my mom would come to me with problems, right, that she was having at work or her personal life and stuff like that. Like even at 13 years old, I was answering those questions. But what I'm most proud of is I not necessarily stepped away from that, but I learned how to deal with that. And then what I'm doing now, because what you told me about success is what changed my life. Like success is defined different from everybody, right? Like obviously I'm going to be most proud of my success. But success is viewed differently from everybody. So like somebody who makes $80,000 a year might think they're successful. Somebody who makes $1 million a year might not think that $80,000 a year per person is successful. But just the ultimate success that I've had so far and what I'm most proud of is the lives that I'm starting to change. Yeah. Like that's what I'm most proud of. And it's not only just like salesmen going to business owners. It's not all that stuff, but like the fact that I'm able to provide for my family the way I am, like nobody else in my family has ever done, even at 25 years old. And I'm not even close to even getting started, I feel like, to be honest with you. But just allowing my kids to never have to struggle, never have to worry. Like I know that's where I'm at right now. It's only going to get better, but that's what I'm most proud of. Just providing life for my fiance, my kids, and just the people that I'm hoping to mentor, obviously.
Cool. I love it. All right, James. Well, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I guess we're going to go back
go back to work and talk 10 more times on the phone tonight. So,
all right, buddy. Well, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, bye.